The haunting image of Sonny Corleone's bullet-riddled car from The Godfather, 1972, remains one of the most iconic moments in film history, a brutal emblem of ambition, betrayal, and the high cost of power. Yet, beyond the screen and the stories that shaped a generation, many of the actors who gave life to these unforgettable characters are no longer with us. Their real-life departures, in many cases, have been as poignant, if not more so, than the fates of the roles they portrayed. In this video, we pay tribute to members of the Godfather cast who have passed on, honoring their lives, their artistry, and the enduring legacy they carved into the fabric of cinema. If this tribute moves you, remember to like and subscribe, and join us as we say a heartfelt farewell. James Caan as Sonny Corleone. Born on March 26, 1940, in the Bronx, New York, James Edmund Caan exploded onto the screen at age 32 as Sonny Corleone, the fiery, impulsive eldest son in The Godfather. His electrifying performance earned him an Academy Award nomination and etched his name into the annals of film history. Caan's personal life, however, was marked by instability. He married 4 times, each ending in divorce. His second marriage, to Sheila Ryan, lasted less than a year. He fathered 5 children, including actor Scott Caan, but later admitted he often fell short as a parent, regretting his emotional absence during their upbringing. The 1980s proved to be the darkest period of his life. After the death of his beloved sister from leukemia, Caan plunged into depression, battled substance abuse, and vanished from Hollywood for nearly 5 years. At his lowest, it was the sight of his own dog, emaciated and hungry, that jolted him back. That moment became a turning point. He clawed his way back from despair. Outside of acting, Caan's life was equally dramatic. He was a 6th-degree black belt in karate, dabbled in professional rodeo, and lived fast. He was even investigated by the FBI for rumored mafia connections and accused of hiring muscle to intimidate Joe Pesci over an unpaid hotel tab. But Caan never fully stepped away from the screen. From Elf, 2003, to Get Smart, 2008, Queen Bees, 2021, and finally Fast Charlie, 2023, alongside Pierce Brosnan, he continued to work. In his final years, he even pleaded with Francis Ford Coppola for a cameo in Megalopolis, calling it his swan song. James Caan passed away on July 6, 2022, in Los Angeles at the age of 82. The cause was a heart attack brought on by coronary artery disease. He also suffered from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, and congestive heart failure. He was laid to rest at Eden Memorial Park Cemetery among fellow Jewish legends of Hollywood. Marlon Brando as Vito Corleone. Born on April 3, 1924 in Omaha, Nebraska, Marlon Brando would forever etch his name into film history when, at 48 years old, he transformed into the unforgettable Don Vito Corleone in The Godfather, 1972. With a hushed, gravelly voice and a gaze full of weight and weariness, Brando gave the mafia patriarch a quiet, haunting majesty that earned him his 2nd Oscar and a place among cinema's greatest legends. Yet off-screen, Brando's life was anything but scripted perfection. His romantic relationships were stormy and filled with sorrow. His first marriage, to Anna Kashfi, dissolved within 2 years. A second union with Movida Castaneda was annulled due to a legal technicality. She was not divorced when they wed. His third marriage, to Tahitian actress Tarita Teriipaya, eventually crumbled under the strain of betrayal and emotional distance. But the deepest wounds came from within his own family. In 1990, his son Christian fatally shot Cheyenne's boyfriend at the Brando estate, a tragedy that shook the family to its core. Cheyenne, struggling with severe depression and substance abuse, took her own life 6 years later at the age of 25. In a moment of raw confession, Brando once said, "I was a terrible father." Burdened by sorrow and regret, he withdrew from the public eye, gaining weight and battling alcoholism in his final years. Marlon Brando passed away on July 1, 2004, at the UCLA Medical Center. He was 80. His death was the result of respiratory failure brought on by pulmonary fibrosis and congestive heart failure, compounded by diabetes and liver cancer. According to his wishes, his ashes were scattered in two places that meant the most to him: Tahiti, his beloved refuge, and Death Valley, alongside the remains of his dearest friend, Wally Cox. Richard S. Castellano as Peter Clemenza. Richard Salvatore Castellano was born on September 4, 1933, in Queens, New York, to Sicilian immigrant parents. At age 39, he stepped into the role of Peter Clemenza, the affable and loyal capo regime in The Godfather. With sly humor and commanding presence, he famously improvised one of the film's most beloved lines, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli." Castellano had already earned critical acclaim with an Oscar nomination for Lovers and Other Strangers, 1970, and became a familiar face on screens large and small with roles in The Super, 1972, and the sitcom Joe and Sons, 1975 to 1976. He often played tough yet endearing Italian-American father figures, equal parts grit and warmth. Yet despite his popularity, Castellano didn't return for The Godfather Part 2. According to reports, a creative disagreement with director Francis Ford Coppola over control of his lines led to his departure. That absence arguably marked the beginning of his gradual retreat from Hollywood's center stage. Behind the scenes, Castellano faced mounting personal and health challenges. He battled heart issues and endured the emotional strain of a demanding industry. Married twice, his first union ended in divorce. Though his second marriage lasted, it too was tested as his health declined. On December 10, 1988, Richard Castellano passed away from a heart attack at his home in North Bergen, New Jersey. He was 55. His sudden death left many reflecting on a career filled with promise and a presence that, though dimmed too soon, had already carved out a place in cinematic history. John Cazale as Fredo Corleone. John Holland Cazale, born August 12, 1935 in Massachusetts, brought heartbreaking nuance to Fredo Corleone, the fragile, conflicted brother in The Godfather. At 37, his performance as Fredo captured both weakness and yearning, making audiences feel both anger and compassion. The quiet sorrow of the character reflected something deeply personal in Cazale himself. Though his career was tragically brief, it was nothing short of extraordinary. In just 6 years, he appeared in 5 films, all of which were nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. From The Conversation to Dog Day Afternoon, The Godfather Part 2 to The Deer Hunter, Cazale imbued each role with a haunting emotional resonance. Director Sidney Lumet once remarked, "There was an infinite sadness in John. It seeped into every frame." Then came the cruel diagnosis: terminal lung cancer. Despite his declining health, Cazale was determined to finish The Deer Hunter in 1977. His castmates and crew rallied around him, most notably Robert De Niro, who personally covered the insurance costs to ensure Cazale remained in the film. His partner, Meryl Streep, stood beside him every day, fiercely clinging to the time they had left. On March 13, 1978, Cazale passed away in New York at the age of 42. He was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Malden, Massachusetts. The Deer Hunter had not yet been released. But to those who knew him, like Al Pacino, Cazale was not just a colleague. He was, and remains, one of the greatest actors of our time. Sterling Hayden as Captain McCluskey. Sterling Hayden was born on March 26, 1916, in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. At 56, he appeared briefly, but memorably, as the crooked and violent police captain Mark McCluskey in The Godfather. Though on screen for only a few minutes, his towering frame and haunted expression made the role unforgettable. Standing and imposing 6 feet 5 inches tall, Hayden had once been dubbed the most beautiful man in movies during his Hollywood heyday in the 1940s. But he never embraced the glamour. For Hayden, acting was simply a way to bankroll his real love, sailing. He crossed oceans, abandoned film sets, and pursued the sea with restless devotion. That fierce independence, however, came at a price. His 2 marriages, to actress Madeleine Carroll and later to Betty DeNoon, ended in heartbreak, and he grew distant from his children. Struggling with alcoholism and regret, Hayden often spoke bitterly about his time in Hollywood, saying, "I never wanted to be an actor. I just wanted a boat and to get away." Despite his conflicted relationship with the industry, Hayden left his mark on cinema. He starred in noir staples like The Asphalt Jungle and The Killing, and delivered a searing performance as the deranged General Jack D. Ripper in Dr. Strangelove. In The Godfather, his short-lived role mirrored his own battles, between structure and chaos, duty and escape. Sterling Hayden passed away on May 23, 1986, in Sausalito, California, after a battle with prostate cancer. He was 70. A seafarer at heart, a reluctant star, and a man forever torn between 2 worlds. Hayden remains one of Hollywood's most enigmatic figures. John Marley as Jack Woltz. Born as Mortimer Leon Marley on October 17, 1907, in Harlem, New York City, John Marley was 65 when he stepped into the role of Jack Woltz in The Godfather, 1972. His appearance was brief but unforgettable, playing the proud, hot-tempered Hollywood mogul whose stubbornness leads to one of cinema's most chilling moments, waking up beside the severed head of his prized racehorse. Marley's blood-curdling scream, raw and primal, would echo across film history as an emblem of unforgettable horror. Spanning a career of over 4 decades, Marley amassed nearly 250 credits in film and television. He earned critical acclaim for his performance in John Cassavetes' Faces, 1968, winning the prestigious Volpe Cup at Venice. In 1970, he garnered both Oscar and Golden Globe nominations for his heartfelt role in Love Story. Yet it was The Godfather, in just a few minutes of screen time, that etched him indelibly into the collective memory of moviegoers. Despite his impressive body of work, Marley never quite ascended to Hollywood's upper echelon. The lack of broader recognition sometimes left him disillusioned. Married twice, he fathered 3 children, but his later years were marked by solitude and faltering health. His second marriage to Beverly became strained, worn down by his retreat into himself and the toll of heart disease. In 1984, at the age of 76, John Marley passed away following complications from open-heart surgery. He was laid to rest quietly at Cedar Park Cemetery in Emerson, New Jersey, a humble ending for the man whose anguished cry remains seared into the legacy of American cinema. Lettieri as Virgil Sollozzo. Alfredo Lettieri, born on February 24, 1928, delivered a performance in The Godfather, 1972, that still chills viewers to this day. At 44, he embodied Virgil the Turk Sollozzo, a cold, calculating heroin dealer bold enough to confront Vito Corleone himself. Lettieri's portrayal was so convincingly dangerous, even the Don appeared cautious around him. Part of what made his performance so authentic was that it wasn't entirely an act. Fluent in Italian and rumored to be a distant relative of notorious Genovese crime boss Thomas Eboli, Lettieri seemed to carry the underworld in his very bones. According to Al Pacino's 2024 memoir, Lettieri once introduced him to real-life mobsters, helping Pacino understand the deeper psychology behind Michael Corleone. Before The Godfather, Lettieri was already known for playing hardened criminals. He went toe-to-toe with the likes of Marlon Brando in The Night of the Following Day, Steve McQueen in The Getaway, and Charles Bronson in Mr. Majestic. He even penned the screenplay adaptation of Villain, 1971, further proving his affinity for gritty storytelling. Whether playing a brute or a smooth-talking manipulator, Lettieri didn't appear to be performing. He simply became the part. Off-screen, though, his life mirrored the chaos of his characters. Addicted to cigarettes and alcohol, he lived hard and fast, enduring 2 failed marriages and a string of wild nights. Friends described him as looking perpetually weary, as if haunted by the knowledge that time wasn't on his side. On October 18, 1975, just 3 years after The Godfather made him internationally known, Lettieri died of a heart attack in New York City. He was only 47. Abe Vigoda as Salvatore Tessio. Abe Vigoda was born on February 24, 1921, in Brooklyn, New York, the son of Russian Jewish immigrants. At 51, he gave a quietly devastating performance as Salvatore Tessio in The Godfather, 1972, the seasoned capo regime who, after a lifetime of loyalty, chooses betrayal. Though Tessio appears only in the first film, the character became a lasting symbol of quiet disloyalty, and Vigoda's portrayal, measured, weary, and steeped in resignation, left a deep impression. In later years, Vigoda became a pop culture curiosity, almost as known for rumors of his death as for his acting. A mistaken obituary by People magazine in 1982 sparked a decades-long running joke. Vigoda responded with good humor, even posing in a coffin with the article as proof of life. The macabre gag followed him for years, often with his own wry participation. He was married twice, but neither relationship brought lasting peace. After his second wife's death in 1992, he lived largely in solitude, openly voicing his frustration at being cast repeatedly in secondary roles that boxed in his artistic potential. Still, Vigoda transformed that limitation into a legacy. His line, "Can you get me off the hook, Tom, for old time's sake?" has become one of the most quoted in mob movie history, capturing a moment of tragic inevitability. Abe Vigoda died on January 26, 2016, at the age of 94, at his daughter's home in New Jersey. This time, the news was real and marked the quiet, dignified end of a long, peculiar, and remarkable life. Morgana King as Carmela Corleone. Maria Grazia Morgana Messina, known to the world as Morgana King, was born June 4, 1930, in Pleasantville, New York. At 42, she brought quiet gravitas to the role of Carmela Corleone in The Godfather, 1972. Her screen time may have been limited, but her presence anchored the family with grace and stoicism, serving as the silent soul of the Corleone legacy. Off-screen, King possessed a voice of extraordinary range, a contralto that spanned 4 octaves. As a jazz vocalist, she released over 30 albums and was once nominated for a Grammy. Though her musical talent drew critical acclaim, she was rarely embraced by mainstream fame. She longed to be seen not only as a singer, but as a multifaceted performer with depth beyond the microphone. She married twice. Both husbands were respected jazz musicians. Her first marriage to trumpeter Tony Frisella ended in divorce, while her second, to trombonist Willie Dennis, was cut short by his death in a tragic car accident, only 4 years in. Later in life, she suffered the most devastating blow of all, the loss of her only daughter, Cazale, in 2008, a grief that quietly dimmed her final years. On March 22, 2018, Morgana King died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in Palm Springs, California, at age 87. There were no grand tributes, no red carpet farewells, just the gentle passing of a woman who gave her voice and spirit to jazz and brought calm strength to one of film's most unforgettable families. Lenny Montana as Luca Brasi. Born Leonardo Passafaro on March 13, 1926, in Brooklyn, Lenny Montana stepped into the role of Luca Brasi at age 46 in The Godfather, 1972. As the fearsome enforcer utterly devoted to Don Corleone, Montana left a lasting impression, one that extended beyond the screen. His performance was short but unforgettable, largely because it drew so deeply from his own life. Long before cameras rolled, Montana made a name for himself in the wrestling ring under the alias Zebra Kid. But his life turned darker when he became entangled with the Colombo crime family, working as a bodyguard and enforcer. He had been arrested, involved in arson, and knew the criminal world intimately. When he accompanied real mob figures to the film set as protection, fate intervened. Francis Ford Coppola cast him as Brazzi almost instantly. The uneasy nervousness Montana showed while filming scenes with Marlon Brando wasn't an act. It was genuine. Coppola, seeing its power, wove that discomfort into Brazzi's persona, creating one of the film's most haunting moments as the trembling killer awkwardly pays respects to Don Corleone. Despite his breakout role, Hollywood never fully embraced him. Typecast as the heavy, Montana took on minor roles in crime dramas and action flicks, but never escaped the shadow of his past. In his later years, paranoia about former criminal ties, broken marriages, and financial setbacks led him into isolation and heavy drinking. Once feared in both fiction and reality, Montana faded into obscurity. He died of a heart attack on May 12, 1992, at his home in Lindenhurst, New York, at the age of 66. The man who once exuded menace slipped away quietly, leaving behind a legacy rooted in both myth and memory. Richard Conte, as Don Emilio Barzini. Richard Conte, born Nicholas Peter Conte on March 24, 1910 in Jersey City, New Jersey, took on the role of Don Emilio Barzini in The Godfather at the age of 62. With a cold stare and calculating demeanor, Conte's Barzini was the quiet architect of some of the film's most ruthless betrayals. Off-screen, Conte's path was just as determined. Before the fame, he worked whatever jobs he could find: truck driver, singing waiter, shoe salesman, anything to stay afloat. His fate changed during a summer stint at a Connecticut resort, where director Elia Kazan spotted his talent and helped launch his acting career. During the 1940s and 50s, Conte became a mainstay in noir and crime cinema, starring in Cry of the City, Whirlpool, and The Big Combo. With razor-sharp features and a smooth, commanding voice, he was the epitome of the sophisticated yet lethal villain. But away from the spotlight, Conte's personal life held its share of challenges. His first marriage, to actress Ruth Story, ended in divorce. His second, with Shirley Garner, endured until his passing, though it was marked by illness and financial strain. He was a father to Mark Conte, who went on to become a film editor, and grandfather to NFL player Chris Conte. On April 3, 1975, Conte suffered a major heart attack and stroke. After 8 hours in intensive care at UCLA Medical Center, he died on April 15th, aged 65. He was laid to rest at Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles, alongside the stars of an era he helped define. Richard Bright as Al Neri. Richard James Bright, born June 28, 1937 in Brooklyn, New York, portrayed Al Neri in The Godfather, 1972, when he was 35. In the shadows of the Corleone Empire, Neri stood as Michael's quiet enforcer, a man of few words but lethal precision. A silent sentinel, he was the steel beneath the silk. Bright was one of just 5 actors to appear in all 3 Godfather films. His character was responsible for some of the saga's most decisive moments. Gunning down Don Barzini during the infamous baptism sequence, carrying out Fredo's execution on Lake Tahoe, and delivering retribution to Archbishop Gilday in Part 3. Neri rarely spoke, but when he did act, it sealed fates. Off-camera, Bright's life was marked by artistic passion and professional struggle. He began acting in his teens on live television, but spent much of his career fighting for recognition. In the 1960s, he was repeatedly arrested for his role in The Beard, a controversial stage production considered obscene at the time. Though ultimately vindicated on First Amendment grounds, the incident branded him with the reputation of a rebel. His marriage to actress Rutanya Alda faced repeated strain due to his relentless devotion to indie cinema, avant-garde theater, and even early interactive media like Ripper. Distance from family life frayed his bond with his children. As he aged, Bright could often be seen with an oxygen tank, living with emphysema, and cleverly using it in roles to mask the toll it took. On February 18, 2006, tragedy struck. Bright was struck and killed by the rear wheels of a tour bus while crossing a Manhattan street. The driver never realized the impact. No criminal charges followed, just a suspended license. Bright died at 68, leaving behind a legacy not of stardom, but of eerie, indelible presence, the ghost who lingered in the Godfather's most chilling silences. Julie Gregg as Sandra Corleone. Julie Gregg, born Beverly Marie Scalzo on January 24, 1937, in Niagara Falls, New York, was 35 years old when she took on the role of Sandra Corleone in The Godfather, 1972. As Sonny Corleone's quiet, dignified wife, her role may have been brief, but it left a lasting impression, forever entwining her name with one of cinema's most iconic stories. Yet the woman behind the role lived a life far more layered than what her soft-spoken character revealed. Raised in an Italian-American family, Julie was drawn to the performing arts from an early age. A music scholarship eventually brought her to California, where she cultivated a dual career as both a singer and actress. Over the next 2 decades, she became a familiar presence on American television, appearing in hit series such as Mission Impossible, Batman, Hawaii Five-0, Gunsmoke, and The Virginian. On Broadway, she was celebrated for her poise and vocal brilliance, earning a Tony nomination for The Happy Time and winning the Theatre World Award. But behind the elegance and talent, Julie faced personal struggles. She endured 2 failed marriages and spent much of her life caught between the pull of career ambitions and the yearning for emotional stability. That quiet conflict left traces of sadness beneath her professional poise. By the late 1980s, after years in the spotlight, she gradually stepped away from the entertainment world. Her final television appearance came in 1987, after which she retreated from public life. Julie Gregg died of cancer on November 7, 2016, in Van Nuys, California. She was 79. There was no media attention, no public farewell, just a quiet passing, much like her brief but graceful presence in The Godfather. She exited the stage as she entered it, with quiet strength, poise, and dignity. An artist of depth and beauty, whose story unfolded mostly beyond the camera's reach. Martino as Johnny Fontane. Born Jasper Cini on October 7, 1927, in Philadelphia, Martino stepped into the role of Johnny Fontane at 45, bringing a haunting realism to The Godfather's velvet-voiced crooner. Fontane's desperate plea for Don Corleone to salvage his spiraling career wasn't just a scene, it was, in many ways, Martino's own truth. A life touched by fame, tainted by mob ties, and shadowed by a quiet, aching vulnerability. Martino first soared to stardom in the early 1950s with Here in My Heart, a chart-topping hit that made history as the first #1 single in UK chart records. But behind the fame lurked danger. Organized crime figures reportedly took over his contract and demanded a staggering $75,000. Fearing for his safety, he fled to England, abandoning the momentum of his American success and entering an exile that would take years to reverse. The role of Johnny Fontane had originally been assigned to Vic Damone, but Martino, reportedly with backing from crime boss Russell Bufalino, mounted a media campaign that pressured the studio. Facing fear and intimidation, Damone stepped aside, and Martino reclaimed the role that seemed written from his own life. In many ways, he didn't just play Fontane, he was him. Throughout his life, Martino married 3 times, with 2 of those unions ending in divorce. He struggled with alcoholism and financial instability, yet his deep, resonant voice and presence in The Godfather reruns kept his legacy alive in the hearts of fans. He died of heart failure on October 13, 2009, just a week after turning 82, in his home in Springfield, Pennsylvania. He was laid to rest at Holy Cross Cemetery in California, a fittingly cinematic farewell to a man whose life and art were often painfully intertwined. Alex Rocco as Moe Greene. Alex Rocco, born Alessandro Federico Petricone Jr. on February 29, 1936 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, was 36 years old when he embodied Moe Greene, the brash Las Vegas casino tycoon, in The Godfather. His character's brutal end at the hands of Michael Corleone became one of the film's most iconic moments, and the role propelled Rocco to new heights, but not without echoes from a darker past. Before Hollywood, he lived another life entirely. Under his birth name, Petricone was entangled in Boston's underworld as an associate of the infamous Winter Hill Gang. He faced charges for assault, vandalism, and was suspected in a mob-related murder. After time behind bars, a car bombing, and a failed marriage, he realized his time in Boston was running out. "If I stayed, I was gonna die," he later confessed. With little more than a coin toss, heads for Miami, tails for California, he escaped to the West Coast and was reborn. Under the mentorship of Leonard Nimoy, he studied acting, shed his thick Boston accent, and became Alex Rocco. But the mobster essence never fully left him. With his gravel-lined voice and cold intensity, he quickly became a go-to for villainous roles. As Moe Greene, Rocco channeled old acquaintances a little too convincingly. Rumors swirled that real-life casino men weren't pleased. Rocco's career extended far beyond The Godfather. He appeared in Get Shorty, That Thing You Do, voiced characters in A Bug's Life, and even won an Emmy for the famous Teddy Z. But behind the scenes, he weathered heavy losses, multiple failed marriages, the death of his wife to cancer, and later, the tragic passing of his adopted son, filmmaker Mark Rocco, at just 46. These quiet sorrows drew him away from public life, and in his final years, he focused mostly on voice work. On July 18, 2015, Alex Rocco passed away from pancreatic cancer at his home in Studio City, California. He was 79. His was a life lived in two acts. First as a street-tough Boston hood, and later as a compelling Hollywood character actor. In both worlds, he played roles few could forget, and fewer could rival. The Godfather is more than a film. It's a legacy that continues to echo through generations. But the lives of the actors who brought it to life carry their own poignant chapters. Which character stayed with you the most? And how does it feel to uncover the real stories behind the legends? Share your thoughts in the comments, click like, and subscribe to keep exploring the forgotten lives of cinema's timeless icons.